It was discovered in the closet, folded up in a military duffel, hidden under dusty photographs and flannel shirts that still carried the scent of gun oil and cedar. It wasn't addressed. No envelope, no date, just his name, in Garrison's precise, jagged handwriting, Kody, and underneath it, 4 additional duplicates. One for Christine, one for Janelle, one for Meri, and the final one for Robyn. No one had any idea how long the letters had existed, but when Janelle discovered them, she said nothing. She simply sat in the room, silent and still, for almost an hour, because what Garrison had written wasn't a farewell. It was a settling of scores, and he didn't want it known until after he was dead. By the time Kody opened his, the family was already unraveling. Janelle's hands shook when she gave it to him. She said nothing. She just looked at him with empty eyes. No screaming, no blaming, just nothing. That was worse. Kody opened the letter hesitantly. He didn't anticipate it hurting like it did. But it did. You just figured I wouldn't speak up, Dad. That I'd remain quiet forever. That I'd be too proud, or too hurt, or too dead to care. It was Garrison's voice on the page. Raw, intelligent, scarred. But you forgot one thing. The dead can't be quieted. They only speak last. And the things that came next would unravel everything Kody had constructed. Within the letter, Garrison outlined stories, receipts, trends. He spoke of the birthdays he saw his mother weep in silence as Kody skipped them and graduations, of promises to keep and break when cameras were not around, of how Robyn always appeared to be the first to know things, like Kody had a secret life that they were not privy to. He wrote of nights when he'd listened to his siblings talking softly in the dark, attempting to make sense of why they felt so invisible within a family that professed to be based on love. He referred to it as a house of mirrors with no reflections. He chronicled times when Kody blamed them for the family's disintegration, when in actuality it was his own splintered allegiance that broke down the framework. And he concluded with a call to action. Tell the truth now, or I will. Because sometimes the dead don't haunt you. They just hold up a mirror. The fallout was instant. Meri, long silent, asked for her own copy of the letter, then released an excerpt in a subdued podcast interview, her voice shaking but unyielding. Christine, already estranged from the family, stood taller. It's time, she said. Time the world knew. Janelle cried, not for what was said, but because she'd known it all along. And Robyn? She vanished from public sight altogether. Because in Garrison's letter to her, he had written just one sentence. You were the favorite, but we paid the price. Some truths require no paragraphs, just clarity. A month later, the courtroom melodrama started. Not for money, not for inheritance, but for legacy. The surviving family members initiated a motion to open Garrison's private will, publicly, not for media, not for fame, but for truth. They wanted the letter to survive. Loudly, forever. Kody opposed it. He labeled it disrespectful, manipulative, and a smear campaign. But the court did not agree. Because when a son passes away with more integrity than the father ever had, the court pays attention. During the trial's opening, the judge read Garrison's letter out loud. People cried, even strangers. Because it wasn't only about the one damaged family. It was about all the quiet voices, all the muzzled sons, all the effaced children who grew up within homes that represented themselves as godly, but were actually just enslaved. Garrison's words, infused in sorrow and steel, cut through every veneer of the show's gilded polygamist facade. And the world finally began to see not only the wives who were harmed, but the children who bore the scars. This was not a family. This was an act, and the curtains closed. Kody remained in stunned silence at the defense table, eyes downcast, fists tightened. No cameras, no do-overs, no cuts, only the ring of truth on oak-paneled walls. He couldn't interrupt. He couldn't spin it. He just listened. To a son he never thought would say a word. And to a legacy he never intended to create. The courtroom wasn't filled, but it was heavy. Not by how many were sitting, but by who was there, and what they were finally ready to say. Christine occupied the left bench next to Janelle, hands locked together in her lap. Meri sat behind them, one row back, sunglasses on, not moving. Robyn sat alone in the front. Her face was pale and unreadable. She hadn't said a word since the letter became public. Kody stood along the center, behind a table with no lawyer standing next to him. He claimed that he did not need one. The judge, a reserved woman in her 60s, studied the document over and over. It wasn't a legal will, not in the classical sense. Garrison hadn't possessed much. There was no property to divide, no trust fund to battle over. But what he'd left was heavier than gold. It was truth, and that in this courtroom was enough. The judge cleared her throat and looked down at the paper. This document, penned by deceased Garrison Brown, has been scrutinized, authenticated, and matched to his hand from 3 sources. It will now be submitted into public record as a willing testament to emotional heritage. Janelle brushed away a tear. Christine gave her hand a squeeze. And Kody? He didn't stir. Not even when the judge started reading it out loud. I never intended to write this. Her voice rang out. But silence shelters the wrong people. Kody shifted a little, narrowing his eyes. He knew better. Garrison had always been the silent one, but that silence had been camouflage, a means to get through in a home that only rang out when one voice, Kody's, rang loudly enough. But now the echo had come back to haunt him. The letter laid out tiny betrayals at first, missed birthdays, broken promises, half-hearted visits that always cut short whenever Robyn phoned. But it went deeper too. Garrison wrote about growing up feeling like an outsider inside his own home. He remembered the day Kody forgot his name during a producer interview. He remembered Christine being shut out for trying to help him through depression. He remembered Janelle begging Kody to just be present, not for the camera but for the kids. And Kody always saying the same thing, "I'm stretched too thin." But somehow he always had time for Robyn's kids. At that line, Robyn winced slightly. Christine wouldn't meet her gaze. Meri finally pulled off her glasses. Garrison's words went on. "You told the world we were a family, but you made your choice long ago. You chose her. You just didn't have the courage to say it out loud. So I will." Kody turned his head away. The courtroom fell silent. You could have heard Christine breathe. The judge hesitated, dropping the page for a second. She scanned the room, then returned to Kody. "Would you like to respond, Mr. Brown?" He stood, adjusted his jacket, cleared his throat, and responded icily. He was upset. That's what this was. Janelle jumped up in a hurry, her voice trembling. "No, Kody. That was truth. Sometimes the quietest individuals speak the loudest truths." Christine stood too, her tone stern. He wanted his truth to be heard. "And you still can't listen." Kody turned to her. "Don't play dumb like you know what I did. You left. I left because I had to." She spat. "Because I didn't want my daughters to grow up thinking that kind of love is acceptable." The judge rapped her gavel once quietly. "Please, one person at a time." Robyn finally lifted her head. Her lips opened as if she was about to speak. But she spoke nothing, because she knew, deep down, she had always known. Meri finally broke her silence from the back of the room, her tone soft and quiet. "He didn't write it to attack you, Kody. He wrote it because he feared his silence would live longer than him." The judge continued reading. There was one more part of the letter. In it, Garrison didn't only address Kody, he addressed the world. "If you're watching this years down the road, know that I loved my siblings. I loved my moms, but I didn't love being erased. I didn't love having to beg for time, or pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I didn't want to be on a show. I wanted to be on a family. If this letter hurts you, then maybe you were part of the problem. And if it cured you, then perhaps you weren't alone." The courtroom went silent once more. Even Kody remained silent. There was nothing more to be said. Only the echo of the truth, at last spoken. As the judge slammed the folder shut, she gazed out across the room, not as a jurist, but as a mother. "I've presided over custody cases, estates, and fractured families. But this is the first time I've been asked to rule on memory, on story, on silence." She stood. "Let it be known that this letter will be preserved, not to punish, but to remember." And with that, the session ended. No yelling, no fireworks, just the weight of a family finally meeting the one voice they couldn't ignore, the one that waited until he was gone, to be heard. The courtroom drained slowly, as if the benches themselves were loath to release what had just been said. Christine and Janelle, left side by side. No words, only an unspoken strength between them, the kind that had resulted from having survived the same man but loving very different iterations of him. Kody sat for a moment longer. He glared down at the letter, now refolded in front of him. It wasn't simply a goodbye from a son, it was a reflection, and Kody didn't care for what he saw reflected. Outside, beneath the gray Nevada sky, Meri didn't join the others. She lingered off to the side, by her car, holding the unopened copy of her own letter. She hadn't been able to read it indoors. Too many eyes, too much history all in one room. Now it was just her, the wind and the pages. She slowly unwrapped the seal and allowed the paper to fall open. Garrison's handwriting covered the page. Sharp, clear, honest. Meri, I don't know if you'll ever know how much you meant to me. I saw you slip away, year by year, into a version of yourself that was not yours. Not because of your decision, but because of his. Meri's hands shook. You didn't vanish. You were erased slowly. I saw it. We all did. And still, you stayed. Tears pricked in her eyes. It wasn't loss. It was grief over being noticed after so long of being ignored. She read on. You taught me how to listen, even when it hurt. And I need you to listen now. Don't let him finish the story. It's not his to end. That statement brought her up short. Garrison wasn't merely reliving memories. He was summoning her to action. Meri doubled up the letter, refolded it. And this time she didn't cry. She turned and headed toward the courthouse steps, not to exit, but to re-enter. She wasn't finished. In the courthouse, the hallway lights hummed softly. Kody stood by the door, gazing at a picture of the founders of the courthouse. He didn't glance up when Meri came over. She didn't request his attention. She simply talked. You shattered him, she whispered. And yet, he wanted to allow you to hear him. Kody sucked in a harsh breath, but still avoided looking at her. Meri moved closer. You had always spoken about legacy, Kody. About how this family was going to be your evidence of success. Finally, he faced her. And now, she breathed. Your legacy is inscribed in a letter from a son who couldn't say the words aloud when he was alive. Kody's jaw cramped. You think I wanted this? You think I asked for this circus? Meri shook her head. No, I think you built it. And never once considered that somebody might flip on the switch. He advanced, his voice constricting. I did my best. I did everything I could. I balanced 4 wives, 18 children, a public persona, a show. You balanced, Meri interrupted. But you didn't keep. The silence between them burned hotter than yelling ever could. She held out her copy of the letter. Read what he wrote me, then tell me again that this wasn't your doing. Down the hall, Christine and Janelle stood just out of view, listening. They weren't surprised by Meri's fire. They were just surprised it had taken this long to come back. Robyn sat by herself outdoors on the concrete bench, her knees pulled up tight, eyes concealed behind sunglasses. She'd said nothing since the reading. Not to the others. Not to Kody. Garrison's statement to her had been brief, but it had struck like a slap to the soul. You were the favorite, but we paid the price. Some truths don't require explanation. Just silence. Later that evening, the family convened, one last time at the old property line in Flagstaff. Not for reconciliation, not to mend, but because Garrison had requested it. Janelle carried the creased flag from his funeral. Christine carried a photo album. Meri carried candles. Kody brought nothing. They stood half-circle on the parched grass, the breeze cool, the wind sighing through bare trees. And Janelle, voice trembling, read the last sentence of Garrison's letter. Don't let my voice be the only voice that speaks truth. She gazed around at the rest of them. This isn't his alone anymore. It's ours now as well. Christine pushed forward and set down the photo album at the foot of the flagpole. I'm not here to forgive, she stated. I'm here to remember. Meri lit a candle. For him, and for the silence I held for too long. Kody moved forward last. He gazed down at the photo album, then up into the vacant night sky. For the first time, he seemed small, not like a head of household, but like a man who finally saw that his version of the truth didn't make it beyond his lifetime. Sometimes the true judgment isn't in a courtroom, but with the people who had to live with your decision. And on that parched, forgotten hill, the Browns, what remained of them, stood in actuality for the first time. No cameras, no producers, no script, just legacy. In its rawest, most indelible form. The news surfaced on a Thursday morning, quietly initially. A mere tweet from a local journalist. Hearing that court papers involving the Brown family and the late Garrison Brown are set to become public. If true, everything changes. By noon, it was everywhere. Sister Wives enthusiasts reposted it 1,000 times. Reddit burst into speculation. TikTok edits combined Garrison's photos from years ago with slow piano and the phrase "he told the truth they tried to hide." And by the time the sun set, national media had picked it up. The world was watching now. Christine's phone was ringing incessantly. Janelle's email was filled with declarations of support and inquiries she didn't want to respond to. Meri, amazingly, didn't bat an eyelash. She'd witnessed the public's moods shift before. This time it was different. This time the story wasn't massaged by editing rooms and network suits. It was raw, unedited, and penned in the words of the one brown child who had nothing left to lose. Kody remained silent for 48 hours. His staff issued no comment. His phone remained silent. And in his Flagstaff home, Robyn posed the question no one else did. "What are you going to do?" He didn't respond, because inside himself, he knew what was next. On Monday morning, the courthouse convened an emergency media hearing. The judge hadn't intended on being a part of a reality TV phenomenon. She hadn't intended on news trucks and cameras parked outside her building. But the law was unequivocal. The records were legitimate, and since they'd been presented in open court, the public had a legitimate right to see them. An Arizona public access reporter asked to film the next hearing. Kody objected at once. "This is our family's business, not a Netflix documentary." The judge arched an eyebrow. "Then maybe you should have thought about that before making your family a brand for public consumption." For once, Kody had no retort. The next hearing was planned for Thursday, live-streamed by state law because of public interest. And every seat in the courtroom was taken before 8 a.m. Christine wore black. Not in mourning, but because she wanted it to be understood. The old story was gone. Janelle had a little notebook. On the inside front in ink was Garrison's last quote: "Tell the truth now, or I will." Meri arrived with no makeup, no camera-ready smile, with just her letter tightly folded in her fist. And Kody, he arrived by himself. The courtroom lighting was more severe this time. The air seemed thinner, and the judge did not waste any time. "Mr. Brown," she announced, "you have the right to reply to your son's letter. You refused at the last opportunity. Today you are being offered a turn." The room was quiet. The counter on the live stream ticked higher. 25,000 viewers, then 30,000, then 60,000. Kody got up, slowly. His voice was steadier than anticipated. "I didn't raise my family to fall apart like this," he started. "But I also know now, I didn't raise them in truth." Gasps came from the back. Christine stared up, stunned. Robyn averted her gaze, and Janelle's lips compressed. Kody continued. "I wanted to be a leader, a father, a protector. But somewhere in the journey I was a gatekeeper. I decided what truths were told, what feelings were important. And when I knew that I couldn't balance it all, I didn't drop the act. I dropped the people." He fell silent. "I dropped Garrison." The room was paralyzed. You could hear hearts shattering. "He was correct," Kody whispered. "He was angry, yes, but he was honest. And I don't know how to repair that. Some truths sting the worst when there's no ovation left to pursue." The judge nodded deliberately. "Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Brown." Then she shifted toward the rest of the family. "You've all been given a voice. But now I have to ask, what are you going to do with it?" Christine stepped forward. "First, I want his letter turned into permanent court record. Not out of shame for anyone, but because it should be. Unedited, unburied." Janelle continued. "I want his words to be heard in every setting where someone is made to feel invisible." Meri briefly stated, "I want peace. For him, and for me." The judge breathed in and delivered her verdict. "Let it be known," she told him, "that this court accepts Garrison Brown's written testimony as an official record of emotional inheritance. It will not be concealed. It will not be edited. And it will be a living testament that not all wounds bleed, but they do leave scars." The gavel came down, and with it so did the final wall of silence. Kody didn't say a word. He just sat back down. The cameras zoomed in as his face crumpled into something unusual. Not anger, not defensiveness, but sadness. Perhaps too late, but still true. You can shut down a voice, but you can't erase a truth once it's been voiced out loud. And Garrison's truth. It was now louder than Kody had ever shouted. The live stream stopped. The room cleared out, but the story finally had started. They did not speak the entire ride home. Robyn rode in the passenger seat, gaze straight ahead, arms crossed over her chest. Kody's fingers wrapped around the steering wheel more firmly than needed. He rode back roads through Flagstaff, hoping to miss stoplights. People noticed, but no one chased them anymore. The truth had long since gone by. At the house, Kody finally broke the silence. You haven't spoken a word since the letter. Robyn blinked slowly, then stood without responding, and went into the kitchen. He trailed behind. Robyn, I need to know. Did you read what he wrote you? She halted at the sink. Her back was to him. I read it, she said in a flat tone. And, she turned around, eyes dark with something greater than grief. He was right. Kody came to a halt. You're agreeing with him? He snapped. I'm saying I know why he felt what he did. I lived in this house too, Kody. I saw it. And I saw you. Kody pounded his hand on the counter. I gave everything I had to this family. Robyn shook her head. No, you gave everything you had to the part of the family that looked good for you. She stepped in closer. And that part was me. That line stung him. And she wasn't done. You made me the front of your second act, Kody. You leaned on me when they were left behind. You shared things they never heard. His jaw clenched. What are you saying? I'm saying I knew more than I said. Betrayal doesn't always come from lies, but from the truths people never say. Robyn sat down, withdrawing something from her coat pocket. A second letter. Not the one Garrison had penned her, but another older. He sent me this 3 years ago, she breathed. After you quit taking his calls. Kody's tone lowered. Why didn't I know? Because he asked me not to show you. He was desperate for a connection. And I didn't respond. She pushed the letter across the table. I thought I was keeping you safe. But actually I was keeping your version of you safe. Kody read the letter, quiet to begin with. It wasn't mean. It wasn't harsh. It was Garrison, stretching out like a boy, still holding on to hope that his father would finally notice him. Kody sat down sharply, as though the weight of it came crashing down on him all at once. I never knew, he breathed. Robyn's voice cracked. That's the issue. You never knew, because you never asked. They sat in silence, not as a couple, not as the last standing limb of the family, but because two humans who had lived within a deceit, too large to realize until everything had been consumed by it. Outside, Christine was parked in her car, observing from afar. She came not to spy, but to put an end to something. She got out, slowly approached the door, and pressed the bell. Robyn answered first, surprised. Christine's eyes were serene. Tell him I don't want an apology. Kody appeared at her back. Then why are you here? Christine breathed in deep. To give you what you never gave him. A last word. She extracted a framed photograph. One of Garrison as a child. All arms and laughter. And crooked teeth. He loved you, she said softly, even when you didn't love him well. Kody didn't say anything. Christine put down the photograph, turned and walked away. And this time she didn't weep, because she wasn't bearing the burden any longer. He was. Later that evening, Kody sat alone in the living room. Robyn sleeping upstairs. The house was dark. The picture lay next to him, and in his hand was the unopened birthday card. Garrison had sent him the previous year, the one he'd neglected, pushed into a drawer too busy to care. He opened it. Inside was a brief note. Still trying. Happy birthday, Dad. And suddenly Kody wept at last. Not because he lost his son, but because his son had never really been his to lose. The dust did not settle fast. Not for Kody. Not for Robyn. Not for any of them. But it settled. Weeks went by. The media tidal wave slowed. Garrison's letter became a headline. More than that, it became a reminder. Not just of hurt, but of what remains when the cameras fade and the truth does not. Christine came back to Utah. But she didn't slam the door on it. She left it ajar. For Mike Kelty. For truly for anyone who needed to drop by. Janelle started volunteering at a bereavement group. Hush, without drama. She didn't talk of Kody there. She talked of sons, of quiet wars, of hearing after it's too late to matter. Meri reopened her bed and breakfast, but with one stipulation: no pretending. If you came to stay, you came as you were. And Robyn, she remained, but not the same. Something had fractured, not in her, but around her. And she ceased attempting to mend what was never hers to mend. Kody didn't disappear. He couldn't. But the highlight no longer trailed behind him. The show had concluded. Not with a bang, but with an epistle. Nevertheless, something within him persisted. A desire to confront what was left. So he called. To a church. To a counselor. To a man he hadn't talked to in more than a year. The session took place in a small office. No cameras, no spectators, just 2 chairs. One was taken. It was Logan, Garrison's older brother. They hadn't talked since before the letter. Logan looked up. You came, he said. I had to. Kody said. Logan nodded slowly, then handed him a notebook. It was Garrison, found following the funeral, full of scribbles, quotes, letters he never wrote, and one entry blue-lined. If he ever asks, tell him, I didn't stop loving him. I just stopped waiting. Kody read it. Once, twice. He said nothing. Logan didn't say anything either. Because some pain doesn't require words. It only requires presence. The following day, Kody took his car out to a remote field close to the Utah border. The same place where the family had always hoped to build a joint home. Nothing had ever been constructed there. Only the reminders of what might have been. He walked by himself, arriving at the location where they had once driven wooden stakes and named it Coyote Pass. In his pocket was Garrison's photograph. Not as a grave marker. Not as a showpiece. Just as a reminder. Kody knelt, placed the photo in the grass, and whispered, I heard you. And for the first time, he meant it. That evening Christine received a text from Kody. Just 2 words. Thank you. She stared at it for a while, unsure what to feel. But eventually, she replied, You're welcome. For him. Janelle opened her mailbox the next morning and found a letter with no return address. Inside was a photo of her with Garrison at a football game, and a sticky note written in Kody's hand. He looked happiest with you. Meri got one too. No picture, just a typed message. You were never invisible. I just never looked close enough. She folded it once, then hid it behind Garrison's letter in her nightstand. Closure doesn't mean everything is okay. It just means it finally stops hurting the same way. In the last few weeks of winter, something changed. The family wasn't complete again. It never would be. But it was truthful now. The deceptions had gone up in flames. The act had been performed. And what was left was people, imperfect, mourning, learning to voice themselves, even when it was difficult. The final scene was not loud. Janelle, Christine, and Meri gathered by Garrison's tree, one they'd planted together on what would have been his birthday. They did not say much. They did not have to. Christine put a small plaque at the bottom. It said, You were heard. And as they stood there, the wind whipping the sound of birds over the trees, they knew. He was. Sometimes a family breaks apart so the truth can stand by itself. And when it does at last, what you do next is what really defines you.